Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be another meta update for TI, and this is going to be after 2 days of the last chance qualifiers. So we're kind of getting a glimpse of the heroes that we're likely going to see throughout the course of TI. And my goal is to give you guys constant updates 2 or 3 times a week to make sure that if you're not watching all the games, that you can kind of keep up with all the meta heroes and the shifts that happen during the event. So be sure to subscribe if you want to make sure that you get all the up-to-date content on the meta.
Banana slam jam.
So first and foremost, this is my tier list from about 2 weeks ago. But I want to make a few adjustments before I even look at the statistics from the last chance qualifier group stage, because there's been a patch since then and a few heroes have drastically changed for me. So first and foremost, I dropped Death Prophet to low A tier, just because of the nerfs that she received. I would bump Silencer all the way from F tier to bottom of A tier, due to the insane buffs that he got to his Arcane Curse. And then I would also like to buff Morphling and Slark to the top of the carry tier list, and Void to the middle, just because of the shift in the meta ever since Void got nerfed. These two have kind of become the top dogs in my pups. So those are a few shifts that I wanted to make real quick. But now what we're going to do is we are going to compare my hero tier list to the pick, ban, and win rate of these heroes throughout the group stage. Talk about the things we got right and why, some of the core heroes in the meta, but then also talk about things I got wrong and maybe why I was wrong and what we can keep an eye out for, and possibly some reasoning behind these heroes being more popular than I initially expected. So let's go ahead and get into it by pulling up the statistics for the last chance qualifiers, starting with the most popular heroes. So the most picked and banned heroes start with Marcy. So I would actually mark her at the very top of S tier, right over there. You know, not too far of a movement, but she clearly is prioritized super highly with a super high win rate. Next up, we have ourselves Enigma. So I think he's about right where he belongs. Next, we have Undying, pretty much getting first picked every single game. And he is still above a 50% win rate. So having a hero that's picked this early on in the draft, this often, with above 50%, I would still leave him right where he belongs in the S tier. Next up, we have Primal Beast, a hero we definitely did not put in S tier. So even though he doesn't have a 50% win rate, we had Primal Beast not nearly as highly prioritized as these teams are giving him. So because his win rate is below 50%, I'm going to put him at the top of A, simply because he's picked and banned so often, but I don't think he's quite deserving of S tier. Next up, we have Batrider. Despite the fact that he's only won 2 out of his 7 games, it is important to note that if you highlight the teams that have picked him, 4 of the 7 games that he was picked were by an NA or an SA team. And we're not trying to flame here, but these teams all got bottom of their groups. So it is a bit skewed, I believe, that Batrider's win rate is so low. So back to looking at the chart, I would still put Batrider in S tier, but he has been nerfed since I made this tier list, and I would still put him at the bottom of S tier because of the fact that he's still picked or banned in almost every single game. Next up, we have Morphling. We even made sure we adjusted this because I've been seeing this hero more and more in my pubs ever since Faceless Void got nerfed. I've actually seen first round Morphlings, usually 4th overall pick, and he's still rocking a 64% win rate. The problem with this hero is the Ags. It's just so strong. The Ags allows you to morph and steal stats from the opponent that you morph into, and it also gives you an extra bonus based on the primary attribute of that hero, and it's especially good against agility carries. So a lot of matchups that were previously against Morphling are even in favor of Morphling, or at least even. So giving him so many good matchups means that the hero is just that much higher tier, especially in the carry role. We had him pretty high up after adjusting according to the last patch, but I don't even think it was good enough based on what we're seeing. I think we're going to put him above Batrider in S tier, clearly the best carry of TI thus far. Next up, we have Faceless Void. The thing about this that you have to look at with all these bans is most of these bans were second round bans. So usually carries that are second round banned are solid picks later on in the draft, but they're not good enough to pick early, so they're often not picked in the first round of the draft, and then still he's getting ignored in about a third of the games. This means that he's still very strong. Don't get me wrong. Easy rhyme right there. But I would still leave him at about probably 4th or 5th on the A tier, based on the fact that his win rate's still only 2 and 3, and teams are either just getting rid of him in the second round of the draft and also just sometimes ignoring him. Next up, we have Shadow Fiend, a hero we definitely predicted to be an A tier. I would say that is an incredibly good performance. We've seen it at carry as well as mid. So the fact that it's a flex pick with a good win rate, picked in most games or banned, I would put him at probably top of A tier. I would put him probably around Primal Beast territory, maybe even top of the A tier for heroes. That's definitely impressive stats coming out from Shadow Fiend. Next up is Beastmaster. We're going to do him and Visage together because they've both been picked 10 times and banned 24 times exactly. They're both summons offlaners, and they both have respectable win rates. 40% from Visage is not all that impressive, but he's often first rounded, while Beastmaster is not as commonly first rounded. Some of his picks are also second round. So I'd say they're similar level of strength. So we had Beastmaster pretty high. I would say that's fair based on his statistics. But Visage, a hero that has risen in stock due to the nerfs on Viper and Death Prophet, the other premier ranged offlaners. So we're going to put him right next to Beastmaster, seemingly where he belongs. So definitely underestimated Visage. But I do believe the nerfs to the other ranged offlaners, these ranged offlaners tend to enable the melee 4s, like Earthshaker, Tusk, etc. So having a hero like this, the best one of the lot, will often get picked significantly more than the others. And I do believe Visage was probably like the 3rd or 4th best about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but now it seems that he is top dog of all of the ranged offlaners. Then we have Lina. And we've even been seeing some first-round Linas, and what makes her so strong is that she just has a very consistent laning phase in the mid lane. So I would say right where she belongs, mid of A tier, that makes sense. Next up is Pangolier. Overall, definitely underestimated Pangolier at middle of low B tier. It's not like we completely wrote him off, but definitely better than we gave him credit for. So let's go ahead and move him up to right behind Lina, just purely based on what we're seeing so far. With a pretty solid win rate, and definitely stonks on him are rising. Clockwork, pretty solid. So one of the highly sought after melee 4s. He's especially good against a lot of the other melee 4s, particularly Shaker. So we're seeing a little bit of a Clockwork Shaker dynamic that we will group these two heroes together. You're seeing Shaker as well as Clock. And I've been seeing a lot of teams absolutely first pick Shaker. Like, it seems like a specialty for certain heroes, especially the teams from China. And the response pick to that is the Clockwork. So it's not really surprising to me that there's slightly more Earthshaker picks than Clock. But we've also seen that some teams have just started first round banning Clock as a way to enable the Shaker to go through the draft. And you're kind of seeing that reflected in the numbers, where Earthshaker's been picked 18 times, but only banned 9 times. While Clockwork's been picked 12 times, but banned 17 times. The fact that Earthshaker is being prioritized really highly, but then they also have to specifically ban a 4 position, potentially a 5 position, makes him, in my book, not be quite as strong as you would think for a hero that's this many picks and bans. So I'd say Clockwork is a bit better than Earthshaker, but it's because he's good against Earthshaker, and they both seem like the top of the lot for the melee 4s. So I'd put Clock here, and then I'd probably put Earthshaker, I'd probably leave Earthshaker at top of B, because even though he's getting picked so many times, if he's rocking a 33% win rate, that's pretty significantly low. So Clockwork, we're going to bump up his stock a little bit, and Earthshaker, we're going to leave him right at the top of B tier. Another hero that we talked about was Silencer. This hero got buffed insanely, and I've seen it tons in my pubs, but 35% win rate. So we're going to have to lower him on our stocks a little bit too. I bumped him all the way up to the bottom of A tier. We're going to put him like middle top of B tier, because that is simply not an impressive win rate. Invoker. A hero that I actually should have thought about, I just kind of slept on. Been seeing him a ton more in my pubs. Not an amazing win rate though. I would move him up. You know, we have him in middle of B tier. I'd put him probably at the top of B tier. About a 50% win rate with that many picks. That to me is a solid hero in the meta, and I do believe we're going to see him more and more. I personally like the Quas Exhort build more, playing a more farm-heavy mid laner, but that might just be because I see it in my pubs, and pubs tend to be a bit more farm-heavy. But I have been seeing a mix of Quaswex and Exhort. Now we've got Viper, the other ranged offlaner. He did get nerfed again since we last made this tier list, so I would say Viper's about where he was last time. Bottom of A tier seems fine to me. But we have to scroll all the way down to heroes that have only been picked 4 times with Death Prophet, and she has a 25% win rate with 4 picks. So that's a hero that we definitely overvalued despite the nerfs coming out in 7.32C. So we're going to bump her all the way down to like mid C tier. That maybe even lower. Like middle to low C tier. The nerfs have certainly hurt her. So Ember Spirit looks like he's one of the highly picked mids, but I will say, I'm going to pull these up, and I know for a fact that Tempest has been picking him in the support role. So how many of these games are Tempest in the support role? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fact that Tempest got bottom of their group, and 4 of these 11 games are support Ember, which I don't think is a true reflection on whether or not the hero is strong or not, I am going to say that these statistics are not all that accurate for Ember Spirit. And the fact that he's highly contested across most games, I'm going to leave him in my head right now at probably a high B tier. So we'll bump him up a little bit in the stonks because he's clearly being prioritized pretty highly. Moving on, we've got ourselves Tusk. So he's being allowed through most games, but people are clearly taking him as one of the highly prioritized 4 positions, melee. I've also been seeing him flex as a 3, so the fact that the hero has some flex potential, even once or twice as a 5, the fact that he's only been banned 6 times implies that teams probably underestimated him a bit, and that they may consider banning him more and more in the future, especially if his win rate remains above 50%. So definitely Tusk, at least high B tier. So we're going to bump him up to low A tier here. So Terrorblade and Slark coming in right next to each other in the carry role. Both heroes picked about the same amount of times, which doesn't look like much, but they're the same as Void. You know, if you look at the statistics, right? We see mainly bans and very few picks, right? So most patches, we have like 3 or 4 premier, what I'd call second round banned carries. And so I would definitely see that Faceless Void is respected as the most bans, and Terrorblade and Slark are considered maybe the next most banned second round carries. So Terrorblade's only won 2 out of 7, while Slark's won 4 out of 6. So I would say Terrorblade, highly prioritized for a carry considerably, but not that good a win rate. Definitely can't rate him too highly. But Slark, definitely up there on the carry based on what we've seen so far. We've only seen Faceless Void and Morphling be prioritized more. So because Faceless Void is still banned way more than Slark, I'm definitely gonna have to bump him down just a little bit, probably swap positions. And then we're also going to move Terrorblade, I would say a little bit up, because he's the 4th most banned and picked hero in the carry role, but he's not rocking a very good win rate. So we'll put him from bottom of B to top of B. Okay, guys. So to prevent this video from being literally an hour long, we're going to make some last-minute adjustments on the tier list based on heroes that are rated too highly and we haven't really seen them on the pick and ban list, and then also heroes that have been performing a bit better or prioritized a bit higher. So let's just go ahead and show you some swaps that I'm making because of what I've seen. So Lone Druid's only been picked once with a lot of bans. So because he's still banned a lot, we'll move him to the around Terrorblade tier. Another second round ban carry. Snapfire has a lot of bans and a lot of picks, but not very high win rate, but we'll move her to the top of B. Lushrak has actually gone up high in stock for mid and carry with that Bloodstone Rush that got buffed a lot in the Bloodstone buffs. The hero got kind of indirectly buffed. So we're going to move him from top of C to actually top of B. Even though we didn't talk very much about Chen, he's been picked only 7 times, but he's still rocking a 70% win rate. So he's not as highly prioritized as he was prior because he got a few nerfs, but still very strong when picked. So we're going to leave him middle of A tier. Drow seeing a respectable amount of picks. I wouldn't consider her situational anymore. She's been picked 7 times throughout the last chance, and we're going to move her to like middle top of B. Similar story for Broodmother. Even though she is a situational pick, she's rocking about the same stats as Drow, 7 picks and 8 bans. We're going to definitely have to bump her stock up just a little bit. I'm going to move Ursa up in my tier list, because I think as these other carries are getting banned more and more, Ursa's gonna, like, Ursa has felt really good in my pubs, and he's only been picked 4 times, but he's won every single game. And I think that even though he isn't necessarily shown this way in the group stage so far, I believe teams are going to pick him more and more often. A hero that I definitely underestimated has been Disruptor. We had him in middle to low D tier, and even though he's only been picked 9 times, he's won 6 out of those 9, and that's pretty significant for a hero that we had in D tier. So we're going to move him up to like middle of B tier, because I think the Ags are just making his late game like insane, and a lot of the carries right now are incredibly elusive, like the Slarks, the Voids, and the Morphlings, and Glimpse into Static Storm is just really good against these pesky little bleep that out. So we had Dazzle in middle of A, and he's definitely going to need to get demoted into like middle of C. He's only been picked twice throughout the entire course of the last chance qualifiers. Also, Lifestealer has become a situational pick, especially for Team Liquid, and it's won 3 out of 4 of its games so far. So we're going to cautiously move him into like middle high C tier, because D tier just doesn't quite represent a hero that's getting situationally picked and winning. So far, most of the heroes in Dota have been picked at least once. But the heroes that have been ignored are Arc Warden, Bane, Clinks, Grimstroke, Keeper of the Light, Meepo, Pugna, Techies, Tinker, Treant, Warlock, and Wraith King. And I just want to make a few comments on these guys before we wrap up the video, because I think some of these could be a bit surprising to a lot of us. Arc Warden and Clinks have really high win rates in pubs, and I also think Tinker is a very strong hero in pubs. But all 3 of these heroes are relatively slow in regards to their timings, and I would consider them to be very greedy and weak to coordinated ganks and tempo. So it's not too surprising to me that none of these heroes have been picked, but the fact that they've been completely ignored, I think they might be getting slept on, especially Tinker. But maybe it's just too difficult to fit him into the draft with a lot of active mids buying Boots of Travel and ganking side lanes. One last thing that I think is interesting to note is Wraith King never being picked, despite the fact that Void is one of the highly contested carries in the meta. Most people think of him as a counter. The problem with Wraith King, I think, is that his skeleton nerfs in the early game just really slowed down his timings. And even though he's good against Void, in theory, Void's mostly getting banned. So if a hero is only going to get picked because potentially being good against an enemy hero, and that hero's banned so much it's not even picked, I don't think it's too surprising that we haven't seen Wraith King. But the whole idea of this video, guys, that I am going to be updating this tier list constantly throughout the course of this event. And I want you guys to be able to keep up, generally speaking, with what we're looking at here. You know, if I start to see one of these C, D, maybe even F tier heroes start to get picked and banned a lot, we're going to have to look into it. There's going to be something that I missed, the meta development that happened that is worth noting. And that's the fun part about TI. Guys, that is the fun part about TI. There's always a meta shift. There's always unexpected things. I can't possibly predict it all, and that is what makes the event so exciting. So please, keep up with me as we go along. Keep mental tabs on this tier list, because we're trying to keep it as accurate as possible. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. See you later.